welcome to another Chelsea chat. And Frank Lampard allegedly being spoken to about taking interim charge for 52 days, 10 games with the Champions League, probably 15 games before the end of the season. When I first heard this, I thought that's absolute madness. Frank, who I love dearly, a club legend as a player and for me as a manager, managing to finish 4th in the English Premier League when we were under a transfer embargo with no money to spend, and then getting us through the qualifying stages the next year. I think his record at Chelsea, not on a percentage game basis, but overall with all those problems built in, was pretty decent. Obviously went on to Everton, who were they're a poison chalice, aren't they? You know, even Ancelotti didn't really get a big tune out of them apart from about 10 games. So I'm not going to hold that against Super Frankie Lampard, but he does lack managerial experience still. He's still a baby in managerial terms, and I've always thought he maybe needed to go to a lower league again, cut his teeth, really learn management, and then come back. He certainly got the kudos when he walks into a dressing room because of his playing career. There are players that I think, oh, you know, I can't tell this bloke anything about achievements. So, yeah, the rough with the smooth. So yesterday we get a few pieces of news. We get the news that the two front runners for the Chelsea full-time manager's job are Julian Nagelsmann, is it, who was just been sacked by Bayern Munich because Bayern Munich weren't happy with post-World Cup levels of commitment by the team, display and results. It's probably the nearest that other teams have ever been to Bayern Munich, and it came after a game that I actually watched against Leverkusen where they lost 2-1 and they looked absolutely naff. I was quite happy about it. I thought there's no way that they're the force that they used to be in the Champions League. And if we were fortunate enough, and I'm not expecting it, but if we were fortunate enough to get past Real Madrid, I'd say, you know what, we got a right chance of beating Bayern Munich, assuming that they get through their ties. So he was sacked because the board just weren't happy with him. There were other things as well. He'd gone on holiday after that Leverkusen game where they were absolutely pony. He decided to take a brief skiing holiday. That didn't go down well with the Bayern Munich hierarchy. Not at all. Julian is known as a bit of a playboy, a coaching genius from a potential point of view, but a bit of a holidayer. And he also fell out big time with Sadio Mane. Sadio Mane thought that it was embarrassing, thought it was beneath him to come on as a substitute for the last 13 minutes for Bayern Munich against PSG in the Champions League, and apparently they had a massive fallout in the dressing room, and that was something else. Could he really handle some of the egos in there? I think in that sort of case you've got to go with a manager. You can't have players telling managers what to do. You know, I think that was probably part of the problem with Graham Potter. He was trying to keep too many people too happy for too much of the time. And yet people this morning on social media are criticising Lampard for falling out with Rudiger and Jorginho after he allegedly told them that they weren't up to, their performances weren't up to scratch, and they threw their toys out the pram. So you can't win, can you? Damned if you do, damned if you don't. The other candidate to take over full time is Enrique. I wasn't a big fan of his Spanish side, I must be honest, but I liked his Barcelona side, but they had some absolute superstars in there, and I've always thought, you know, maybe they would win without a manager. But I think that us this season, with our embarrassment of riches from a playing point of view, have proved that's not the case. I've looked into both these managers. Nagelsmann I'm not convinced about, I'll be honest, although he seems to be the favourite until yesterday, when Luis Enrique was interviewed for the job and he apparently blew him away with his plan for how he would utilise that squad, bringing youth into the team, style of play, 3-4 year plan. Apparently he blew them away. But the board had always said they're going to have a 2-interview process, no matter what. It's alleged by a couple of journalists this morning that I saw on I think it was Twitter, it could have been Facebook. Oh, if they don't want to join our club now, we don't want them. Why do Cabbages use the word we? If you're a proper Cabbage, use the word I. Because the chances are that a lot of people, some will agree with you, as is their right, as is your right to a view. But don't use the term we. You don't represent the whole of the Chelsea support base. You represent you, the same as I represent me. I don't use the term we because a lot of people disagree with me. We don't want someone at our club that don't want to join now. Why would a manager want to join now? Enrique went in yesterday, allegedly, and gave this talk, this projection of what he wanted to do, based on having a pre-season with the players, and he also said the players that he felt we needed. He also, allegedly, gave a list of players that could go. He also, allegedly, felt that there would be no benefit of him taking over now. It was just, if we lost in the Champions League, he'd had no time to work with a team. So if we lost in the Champions League, that would be on his head. If we stumbled, like I expect us to do, for the next 10 games, when he's got no time to work with a squad, that would be on his head. And you know, with our support base, a minority of whom are absolutely brain dead, no comprehension of coaching, how long things take, players settling in, a manager getting to know players individually, know who needs an arm round them, who needs a kick up the backside. No comprehension of all that. They'd be on his back straight away. They'd be, oh, get rid of Luis Enrique. Get Tuchel back. Get Tuchel back. Get rid of Enrique. He's rubbish. Get Potter back. So you know the people I'm talking about, don't you? So yeah, that's what. Reading between the lines, I've been looking through Ornstein, Fabrizio Romano, Liam Twomey, those sort of people who have got close ties, good contacts within the club. So that's where we are. Having looked at Enrique a little bit more closely, I think he is the best candidate out there. I think that Chelsea as a club would probably do a lot worse going somewhere else. And I hope he gets the full-time job. So we are left with Bruno Salter, who by his own admission, he's not even an assistant. He wasn't even first assistant coach. That was Billy Reid. So Bruno Salter, and I think he did a good job, by the way, picked his first ever professional team on, was it Tuesday night? Yeah, Tuesday night against Liverpool. We've got Real Madrid next week. And I'm not being funny to Bruno Salter. Look at his playing history. When he walks into that dressing room, and you've got World Cup winners, and you've got Champions League winners, they're nearly all internationals, aren't they? Are they going to have the respect for a guy that played at his level? They should have. I agree with you if you're sat there saying, yeah, they should have. They're professional footballers. Whoever walks in that door, they should follow out its instructions, and they shouldn't need to be inspired. They should have the professional acumen to go out there and give 100% for the fans. But you and I know that it don't work like that. We've seen too many times this season when they haven't done that. Also seen it under Tommy Tuchel, Frank Lampard, Conte, Jose Mourinho, Sarri to an extent on occasions. So what's the one common denominator? Yeah, it's the players. So Bruno, he's got that to deal with. Now, I suppose, looking in hindsight, Chelsea have thought to themselves, we've got 10 games left. We've got 52 days before the end of the season. What do we do? Do we stick with Bruno Salter? Now, I think this is a terrible piece of planning. Why not keep Graham Potter just in place until the end of the season? Probably because the Muppets out there, and don't get me wrong, I finished with Potter. I didn't see him as a long-term Chelsea manager anymore, really, after the team selection against Villa, but perhaps before. I was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, and I didn't think he was going anywhere. So now we've sacked a manager who at least has got a fair bit of managerial experience without a replacement. And the more I think about the actions of this board, the more I worry about it, I'll be honest. But we've sacked a manager without a replacement and left a third choice assistant coach in charge with a Champions League quarter-final coming up. That's what we've done. So I reckon they've said, right, who can we have who will go into that dressing room with experience, who can give them a little lift, maybe even just for the Champions League, who will carry on trying to develop the youngsters, and there's a lot of youngsters there to be developed, and will accept that he's only here for 52 days. Now, I don't see, unless he wins the Champions League, which we all... No, we don't. Which I think is doubtful. Unless he wins that, I don't see any upside for Frank Lampard, other than the fact that he must really love the club. If we got knocked out the Champions League, it'll be because of him, or because he's played too many English players, or he's played too many youngsters. And we've got some difficult games coming up in the league, if we don't win the majority of them, it'll be down to Frankie Lampard. Oh, he was a rubbish manager. He was a rubbish manager. He was rubbish at Everton. He was rubbish at Chelsea last 10 games. He was rubbish at Derby when he got them to the playoffs. He's rubbish. I love Frank as a player, but as a manager, he's shocking. Yeah. Finishing 4th in the English Premier League with no transfer budget, and then getting us to the last 16 of the Champions League the following season, which of course Tommy came in and we won. Yeah, he was terrible, Lampard. So you either got an established English international who's won everything in the game, Chelsea's all-time record top scorer, to walk into that dressing room, or you've got Bruno Salter. I think it's a no-brainer upon reflection. First of all, I heard it, I thought it's mad. Now I think it's just a feel-good. It's just a feel-good appointment, which a lot of us, I assume, do feel good about. Now, the big wees out there on social media are kicking up. You know, Frank Lampard isn't the greatest manager in the world. I think he's proved that. He's a baby in managerial terms, but I think he can only get better. And he did develop a lot of our youngsters, and that's what I think Paul Winstanley and the other, I can't remember the other director's name, who sporting director. I think that's what they're looking at. So overall, I'm behind it if it happens, and apparently it might not. Mind you, it's probably happened by the time you see this. So that's my thoughts. I've been asked for my thoughts on it. I've seen so much negative, but there's going to be negativity all round, isn't there? There's some of those people out there that if they won the Euro Millions jackpot, they'd be saying, "Oh, you know what? It was more. The jackpot was more a couple of weeks ago. I've only won 80 million. I could have won 160 million 2 weeks ago." Those people are out there, and unfortunately, because of the success of the club, they've tagged themselves onto Chelsea Football Club. What can you say about these people? No support. We're supporters, but we don't support. We are actually negative about everything unless we win. Unless we win, and then we're supporters. Absolute fuds. That's a word in Scotland. Absolute fuds, rockets, cabbages. So that's my view. I'm hoping we get Luis Enrique long term. Looked a lot more closely at him now. I think he's a disciplinarian. He loves playing attractive football. And Nagelsmann, the big negative was that he's not been playing offensive, attractive football. Certainly the last few games. Luis Enrique, totally dedicated to football, and he'd be totally dedicated to Chelsea. I just think all round he's the best option out there at the moment. Don't get me started on Pochettino. Looking at the same journalists for information, people saying, "Oh, yeah, Chelsea would accept Pochettino." I personally don't want Pochettino. Not just because of his Tottenham links. I know a lot of people rave about him. He gave the club feel-good factor. Tottenham Hotspurs, anyone that wins 5 games in a row would give them a feel-good factor. They're used to not winning things. He's not called Potless Poch for no reason. I don't want him at the club. If he comes, yes, I'll support him. But I won't lie, not with the same enthusiasm that I would support Enrique or even Nagelsmann. So that's me. I think I've covered everything about the Frank Lampard issue. I think I've covered everything about the managers. There are other managers who are talking about. The Sporting Lisbon guy, I can't remember his name now. But big difference between the Portuguese league and the Premier League. Big difference in club size between Sporting Lisbon and Chelsea. They are a massive club, don't get me wrong, but Chelsea have just gone, since this takeover, and maybe even before, 2 Champions League wins, we've just gone that bit higher. He doesn't seem to have any great track record of developing players, but as a team, developing teams, he seems to be pretty good. And they seem to be the main protagonists in this. Okay, hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about Lampard. Let me know who you want as your next manager. Don't say Thomas Tuchel. Thomas Tuchel, I'm reliably informed, was sacked because in front of the players, he tore into Bowley and who's the other one? Erdogan. He tore into them in front of everyone. Told them they didn't know what they were doing. Told them to stay out of his business. Burnt all his bridges, which was a shame. Because I think long term he could have been a good manager, even though we were playing absolutely dross over him. Tuchel will not be back at the bridge while Bowley's in charge. Trust me. I think all these... Oh yeah, he was snorting cocaine off a hooker at Cobham. As far as I'm aware, from a good contact inside the club, absolute rubbish. Would Bayern Munich appoint a cokehead as manager? But you know what social media is like. Let me know what your thoughts. Please subscribe to the channel And yeah, speak to you after Wolves, if not before. Who knows what happens at our crazy club. Up to Chelsea.